the most important impetus, I think, for setting up the Center for Studies in Gender and Sexuality is because nothing of that kind exists. There are certain centers for women's studies established doing wonderful work, but there is no center for gender studies that includes men and women. So automatically people assume when you use the word gender you mean women, as though men don't have a gender, or that they're not hijras who have a gender, or hermaphrodites who have a gender. So gender is actually an umbrella concept that affects us all, but that has mistakenly got attached to women and women alone. And that's a mistake I think we need to address and try and rectify. The second reason, of course, for setting up such a center is that even centers that deal with women's studies absolutely do not, and certainly not in their titles, deal with sexuality. So sexuality, by making sure it's in the title, we're sort of announcing our intention very clearly to be an intellectually rigorous, socially activist center that thinks seriously about both gender and sexuality, and especially in a country like India, which has such a long, deep, multiple layered histories rather, of sexuality. I mean, not just are we the land of the Kama Sutra, we're the land of deeply erotic Sufi poetry, we're the land in which Khajuraho is being built, in which Konark is being built. And what is amazing to me, for instance, recently in Orissa, the culture minister says, oh, you can't show 10 seconds of nudity. Do you feel like saying, have you ever visited Konark and seen what's on your temple walls? So people forget. And one of the reasons to establish a Center for Studies in Gender and Sexuality is to allow people not to forget. Not to forget where we come from, and not to forget where we can go to, instead of being stuck where we are right now in this sort of incredibly moralistic, pious, violent cycle, which is extremely depressing. In India, one of the things that I'm always fascinated by is that the norm is constantly shifting. So some people will say, oh my God, the norm is reproductive heterosexuality because you have to have children. Another group will say with equal vehemence, the norm is either celibacy or sex without reproduction. And there are all these, in a country with sort of 33 million gods, you can just imagine there are multiple points of view. And one of the things that's important for us to do is really to take seriously the multiplicity of those points of view, right? To really think about how fostering that multiplicity can sort of remind people, because we still have that embedded memory in us, historical memory in us, remind people that things were not always this way and they can change again once they have already. And also to encourage more and more research on what's already going on, because I actually don't think, even though ours is the first center called Center for Studies in Gender and Sexuality, I don't think this is the only space in which such work is going on in this country. There are many places in the unorganized sector, many things people are doing just in neighborhoods. And what happens if we actually take all these ideas seriously? What happens if we actually ask people to think? What happens if we make thinking sexy again? And to make thinking sexy, you don't actually have to belong to a center. You have to be committed to a point of view, a view of the world in which non-acceptance, non-conformity actually becomes a viable possibility.